Good evening. Alright, so as the title suggests, we're going to be going through some basic autopilot use in the high performance group H145 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Alright, so as I always like to do, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some settings that are going to be important for this video. So right here on the tablet, I'll go ahead and pull this up. I do have cyclic follow-up trim in hover. I have a spring centering device on both my pedals and my cyclic, so you'll see that information here. And then I always keep my dead zones as low as absolutely possible so that I can not have that thing fighting against me. Alright, so the other thing that I do want to go over real quick is in the controls. So on my joystick, very important, is going to be the number 3 button right here is going to be rotor trim reset. And you want that to be on press. Alright, so this 4-way hat right here, you're going to want forward is decrease rotor longitudinal trim. Backwards is increase rotor longitudinal trim. Right is increase rotor lateral. Left is decrease rotor lateral. And then on mine, I have this one right here set up as autopilot off. Now this doesn't actually turn your autopilots off. That is a different button entirely, but what this does is it disengages your upper modes, and we'll talk about what that means. Last thing for the cyclic is going to be this number 2 right here. And I have this set to toggle auto hover. All right, jumping over to my throttle. So it's going to be this 4-way trim right here. So we'll go up, increase autopilot N1 reference. Down is decrease autopilot N1 reference. And then right is rotor trim right. And left is rotor trim left. And that's all the stuff that you're going to need to have mapped in order to use the autopilot system the way that I'll be using it. Alright, lastly, I'm going to jump over here. You'll be looking for these two to turn yellow when I press my rotor trim reset or my force trim release button right here. So when I push that button, you'll see those turn yellow. You're also going to see override on the screen right up there. I'm going to drop this caret so you can see there. So on my cyclic, if I push forward, you'll see this quadrant light up. If I push back, right and left. And then on my cyclic, it'll be same thing, up, down, right, and left. Alright, so when we first take off, I'm going to go ahead and pick it up, and we will be in what is called basic attitude hold mode. So press and hold force trim release, pick it up to a hover, continue holding on that. So in basic attitude hold mode, when I let go of trim release, the aircraft is going to maintain its attitude, so it's pitch and roll. If I press the trim release and I move it to a new attitude, now the autopilot is going to hold that attitude. I can fine trim that attitude by using my 4-way trim right here. So rotor trim longitudinal, decrease and increase, and then my roll I can fine tune with these right here. These right here in basic attitude hold are not going to do anything whatsoever. Alright, so I'm going to press and hold force trim, and we're going to go ahead and come out here. We will go ahead and take off. Alright, starting out in basic attitude hold, I'm going to let go of my trim release. I'm going to let the autopilot systems catch up, center all the controls, and now with my 4-way trim switch, I'm going to manage my pitch and roll. So for all of this, I'm not moving my stick at all. I'm simply using the 4-way trim. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and bring it on into a 2-axis mode. So some of the different 2-axis modes that we can use are indicated airspeed. So when I am in indicated airspeed, we'll show right here IAS on the AFCS tape, AFCS for Auto Flight Control System. So the AFCS tape right up here shows that indicated airspeed is in the pitch axis. So right here we go collective roll pitch, and indicated airspeed is active on the pitch axis. What this means for me is now my rotor longitudinal trim decrease increase, so fore and aft on this 4-way beep now controls my indicated airspeed. So if I push forward, indicated airspeed comes up. If I pull back, indicated airspeed comes back. So what I can do is I can set that direct to VY. And oh, by the way, I can also do it from down here. So right there, I can move it fore and aft. But let's say I want to climb. So I set it to VY. My collective axis is still on me. So it's a 2-axis because in any upper mode, the yaw axis is engaged. So right now we are in pitch and yaw. Alright, so if I pull power, now since I'm at VY, I can go to my absolute maximum rate of climb. And I do need to give that a little bit of left cyclic because I am turning and not meaning to. And since I am at VY, I have takeoff power available to me. So I've got this 30-minute limit right there. And there you can see right there, we are climbing at a substantial rate. Now from here, I can increase my speed, decrease my speed, whatever I want to do directly from this. Now I'm interested to see, and it's been a while since I've tested it, if I am only in indicated airspeed, I should be able to drop down, I believe, to 30 knots. So let's see what it does. So right here, I'm in yellow, and I have the 2 arrows pointing inward. And I'll go ahead and lower that collective a little bit. I have the 2 arrows pointing inward, letting me know that I was not at my selected airspeed. So if I come down here again, there we'll see turns yellow, and that lets me know that it is armed, it is active, but that I am not within a certain threshold of that airspeed. And it looks like it is going to let me come all the way down to 30, and then it stops at 30. So that is pretty legit right there. Alright, so we'll go ahead and pick up a little bit of airspeed here. And then I'm going to take it off by right-clicking. We'll take it off of indicated airspeed. And now I'm going to go into altitude hold mode. And we see right there, it dropped a bug right there on, oh, I'm sorry, I screwed that up. Altitude hold right there. So it drops a bug at my current altitude, and the aircraft will level off for that altitude. Now, we see here that the altitude is in the collective axis. So it's green, it is captured, it's active, but it's in the collective axis, which means I no longer have control of my collective, and you can see right there that little bug that's processing around. That's me moving my collective. So the autopilot has control of my collective. There's nothing I can do about it in the sim. But if I pitch it over, it will pull whatever collective is necessary to maintain my altitude and give me new airspeed. So when I'm flying along and I want to maintain an altitude, then I can set this, and now I can just pitch for whatever speed I want. I just have to make sure I pay attention to my power, because if I get to a point to where I get going too fast, then I run out of power. Same thing if I get going too slow. So unlike the indicated airspeed hold, this has no way of controlling my airspeed. So it's not going to slow me down, or it's not going to keep me from getting too slow. So at some point, as I'm decelerating, I will get below a threshold where the autopilot can no longer guarantee me that it can hold the attitude or the altitude. Now in real life, above 60, this altitude would be in the pitch axis, and then below 60 it would switch over to the collective axis. Now let's see what this thing does if I get going too slow. And it looks like it's going to hold it for me. Alright, very good. Alright, so the autopilot off that we mapped right there at the beginning, I'm going to go ahead and press that autopilot off. And I'm going to time it until my collective right there is synced with the current collective position. That way my aircraft doesn't jump on me and do crazy stuff. So I'll push it, and now I've kicked that autopilot offline. I've gone back into basic attitude hold mode. Alright. The next one we're going to do is altitude. Phew, that startled me. I don't know why, but it startled me. Alright. So, I'm going to set my altitude acquire. And what that's telling me is that I have set it, so let's go ahead and set it for 55. And I'll lower the power, and I'm going to descend. So I've told it I want to acquire an altitude of 5660. Let's just go 5510 is pretty close to 5500 there. And as I pass through that, I will get that Alt A crossing, and that's warning me that I have input some altitude acquire that I would like to go to, but I forgot to arm it, and now I have passed through that altitude. So with that altitude acquire input, I will right click the altitude A, and now we're going to see it's going to pull power, and I'm going to nose it up so that I don't exceed power, and it's going to climb 300 feet prior. That box goes away, and I switch from vertical speed mode to altitude mode. Now once it goes to that, now that increase and decrease N1 on my collective, I can beat the altitude. And as long as I stay within 300 feet of my current altitude, it will just climb to or descend to that whatever altitude. However, if I go outside of that, now it's gonna throw me that bug again. Alright, so I'm just going to let that level off. Now let's see what happens here. Yep. So if I roll this, I can put in a new altitude. So say we're flying along, we're IFR, we're at whatever altitude we were assigned, and they say expect 4,000 in 10 minutes. I can go ahead and dial in 4,000, or if I'm on an approach and I know my next step out, I can go ahead and dial that in, and I can leave it in the box. And then I hit my point where I need to step down, or they call me on the radio and say descend to this altitude, and I knew it was coming. I've already got it loaded in. Now I just right click. We go into vertical speed mode right here. This is letting me know that altitude A is armed, altitude acquire is armed, vertical speed mode is in control. Now that increase decrease N1 that we mapped to the beep four-way beat trim on the cyclic, I can increase and decrease that vertical speed. So if I need to expedite my descent, I can drive it down, or I can descend more shallow. So I'll just go ahead and do a standard 1,000 feet per minute, and there it goes. Now let me get zoomed in here and we will see. So 3960, that should be 40 at 4260. We should see this switch from vertical speed to altitude hold. So that'd be 300 feet prior. Just give it a second, let it do its thing. Almost there. Probably about right there. Boom, there it is. Now we've switched from vertical speed mode and altitude acquire to altitude hold. We're still in yellow, letting me know that I'm not quite there yet, but it's trying to get it. Now we're within the steady state threshold, and we are in altitude hold, and it's just slightly correcting. Alright, the next 2-axis mode, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it off, and we're going to go heading mode. So now my pitch and my collective are on me, but my heading is engaged. So there's my bug right there on my horizontal situation indicator, and right here heading is letting me know that the roll axis. So now if I go right and left with this, because heading is armed in the roll axis, right and left now beeps my heading bug. So this is useful when you're being vectored and ATC tells you turn right heading 30. So I would just hold down right and I would watch that bug process around until it got to a heading of 300 and let go. Alright, so right here, on the other side of this butterfly right here, is you can go straight into vertical speed mode. So let me get rid of heading mode and level the wings. So fine gauge vertical speed mode right there, it's showing vertical speed on the collective. Now my collective is no longer mine. I can either turn this to change my vertical speed, and you see the bug coming down right there, and then the VSI chasing the bug, or now this beep trim, that N1 increase decrease, now adjusts the bug. So you see right here is up down, and we're showing right here all 4 ways in my cyclic are in attitude hold mode. Alright, vertical speed is not necessarily very useful in and of itself. Normally you would use vertical speed mode in conjunction with altitude acquire, but that is it there. Alright, I'm going to skip cruise height because right now, even if I tried to engage it, it won't, because we're above 2,500 feet, so the radar altitude is essentially dead. We're beyond its useful range. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and flip this over real quick. It's the same thing, only the difference is now I have a flight path angle. And the big difference between that is if I'm in vertical speed mode and I am descending at 500 feet per minute. So I'll go ahead and set that up for a 500 foot a minute descent. And then I slow back. The aircraft is still going to maintain 500 feet a minute of descent, but I'm going to be moving slower. So you can see my flight path angle is coming down because I'm going slower. Just like if I speed up, that flight path angle comes up because now I'm moving faster. My vertical speed stays the same. If I switch it over to flight path angle, now the same thing, that beep up and down changes my flight path angle, and we can see it. We got too much symbology overlapping right there. So the green box is the flight path angle that I'm telling it I want it to go. The tan or yellow box is the path that I'm actually going. Now, if I slow down, it's going to maintain that flight path angle, but look at my vertical speed. My vertical speed will be the one that changes in order to maintain that flight path angle. So this is useful because most of your approaches are at 3.5 degrees. So you can go ahead and set that up for a 3.5 degree descent. And I'll go ahead and turn it off for now. And I will preload it. Oh, it's not going to let me preload it. Well, that's silly. So I could go ahead and put it at a negative 3.5 degrees. And as long as that is on the runway, I'll know that I'm headed down to the runway. Alright, so I'll go ahead and turn it off, and I'll go ground track. So, just like flight path angle versus vertical speed, you have ground track versus heading over here. So, if I have, let me go ahead and turn this into a crosswind here. If I've got a crosswind and I slow down, then we're going to notice the aircraft is going to crab in order to maintain that ground track. And if I speed up, the aircraft will do what it has to do in order to maintain that ground track. Versus, if I'm in heading mode, it is going to face the same way no matter what. So if I were to slow down with a crosswind, we're going to notice that my heading will stay the same, but my ground track is going to start to deviate. And there it's starting to swing. See it ever so slowly departing from my current heading. So you'll use that heading versus ground track depending on which one you want. Now, ATC is always going to give you a heading. So don't use ground track. If ATC tells you to fly a certain heading, make sure that you're on heading and not ground track. If you are trying to fly to a specific airport. Let's go nearest airport. And this is telling me it's a 098. If I fly a 099 heading, then I'm not going to get there. Let's go ahead and activate it, and we'll see right here that even though it says that it is a 116, so if I point that right to it, we'll see right there that I am not actually flying to that airport. However, if I switch it over to ground track, now I can put that bug directly on it and I will fly actually to that airport. Now, of course, you could just couple it, but if for whatever reason you didn't want to couple and you just wanted to fly to that airport, that ground track would help you do that. Alright, so that's it for all the 2-axis modes. Now we're going to go into a 3-axis. So a 3-axis means that I am going to use only 2 boxes on this AFC-8 tape. So let's go with an indicated airspeed and a heading. So here we have pitch and roll, and of course the 3rd axis being yaw. My collective is still up to me. So maintaining a constant airspeed, collective is going to control my vertical speed. As I lower the collective, vertical speed comes down. But it will always pitch for the airspeed that I have set over here. And again, I can use this 4-way beep trim to speed up and slow down my bug, and it even sees it right here, indicated airspeed plus and minus and heading plus and minus. So I can move that heading bug around. Alright, so I'm going to, if I want to stay in 3-axis, I can get rid of something in pitch and switch it over to collective. So now I'm still in 3-axis. So now my pitch again controls my airspeed. Now this is not how the aircraft actually works. Again, this altitude should be over here on the pitch axis above 60, and my collective would be controlling my airspeed, because it would be pitching for altitude and the collective would be unarmed, and I would be pulling collective, and as it pulled collective, the autopilot would pitch the nose over and gain more speed. But because my altitude is on my collective axis, I can't do anything with my collective, and I'm still pitching for speed. So this is useful if you know what heading you want to fly, what altitude you want to fly, but you're not so concerned with the airspeed, and you just want to get what you can get. Alright. Now in this aircraft, I can do 3-axis with altitude and airspeed. So now I'm pitching for speed, and the aircraft will handle, well, I'm not pitching for speed. I've set my speed here, and the aircraft is handling collective and pitch in order to keep these two parameters. And then it's my job to manage the roll. So any of these 2 and 3 axis autopilot settings are really just kind of up to the pilot. If the pilot feels the need to manually control one of the axes, they can by not engaging that axis and simply engaging another one. But realistically, what a pilot is going to do is they're going to be in some sort of a 4-axis mode. So they're going to have all 3 of these on the AFCS tape active. And so let's go ahead and do that. So right now I have altitude on the collective, I have indicated airspeed on the pitch, and the only one that I can choose here is either heading or navigation. So let's go ahead and hit navigation. And let's see where that airport is at. And there it is right there. Alright, so one thing that I can do, I can use my systems properly here, is actually, let's go to a different airport. Not too far away. I think that'll work perfect right there. So we're going to do a direct to on that. And then I'll pull up my navigation display so that I can see, alright, we are 5 minutes away from this airport and I'm at 6,000 feet. So if I want to land at that airport, I need to go ahead and set up a vertical speed of at least 1,000 feet a minute. And let's go 1,500 to make sure that I get down where I want to go before I get there. And so now I'm in 4-axis. Navigation is on my roll axis, which means my cyclic beep right and left has no function whatsoever. I can click it all I want, but it's not going to do anything. Cyclic beep fore and aft speeds up and slows down, so it controls my airspeed bug, and my collective beep trim up and down controls my vertical speed. So I had set up right here, we are 5 minutes away, so there's 5,000, and I'm coming down at 1,500 feet a minute, which means I will impact the ground before I get to that airport. I'm not actually going to impact the ground. I'm going to go ahead and level off at some point prior to the ground. But by looking at this value right here and how much altitude I have to get rid of, I can figure out how fast I need to descend. So we'll give this just a minute. See if I can't find that airport outside. Now, one thing I do need to be aware of right here is we can see that my flight path angle is putting me into that mountain right there. Stop it. So my flight path angle is telling me that I'm going to hit the mountain. But now I'm missing it to the right, so I got lucky there. So that's another thing that I can use this system for. Alright, 3 minutes, 2,500 feet, 1,500 feet a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this back up to 1,000 feet a minute. And now that's showing me well clear of this mountain right here. Still looking for this airport out here. And I am not seeing it. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel my vertical speed and switch it over to altitude hold mode. So I'm still in a 4-axis. Altitude is on the collective, navigation is on the roll axis, and indicated airspeed is on the pitch axis. And I'm guessing that is my airport right there. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and decouple this. And I'll couple my heading mode. And I'm going to bring it on around. And slow back. So all of this I'm using my 4-way beep trim. Alright, so using that beep trim, I'm going to come on around to the right here. And I'm going to slow back to 60 knots. Let's, I tell you what, let's just go to VY. And I'm going to start a bit of a downwind here. And I'm going to see if I can time this right with a flight path angle. To get it on the runway. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and swing this thing all the way around. And we will go ahead and engage my flight path angle, and then using my beep, I'm going to bring it back and slow us down a little bit here. Nope, not yet. So there we can see, based on my flight path angle, that I will arrive on that runway. Alright, and now I'm going to go ahead and go to cruise height. And I'll bring that speed on back to 30 knots. So you can land this aircraft semi-manually pretty much with only autopilot. Alright, so this would be a good time to talk about the ground trajectory command mode. So, if I put it into GTC, it is going to allow me, with this beep, to pick up whatever speed across the ground that I want, and whatever track that I want. So if I would like to follow a road, or more importantly, if I were interested in a ship, so maybe I was trying to do a rescue on a ship. Let's see if I can find one out here. Oh, of course we don't have one anywhere near close. So we'll go along the shoreline and we will simulate. So if I wanted to land on or perform a rescue from a ship underway, then I could do that ground trajectory command mode. And I forgot to mention the button that I'm going to use to do that is going to be that toggle auto hover. So one press of the toggle auto hover and now I am GTC mode, ground trajectory command mode. So I'll go ahead and lower the collective to get us down there. And I'm going to fine-tune my heading with the roll right and roll left of cyclic trim. And I can kick it out of trim. I believe below 10 knots is supposed to kick it out of trim. But by beeping right and left, I can change my GPS base ground track and my GPS based ground speed. So by holding down, it's going to go 10 degrees nose up and continue to decelerate until I let go. And now I can fine-tune that forward speed to match whatever thing that I'm looking to match. Which allows me to look out the door and be pretty much hands off. And now, while doing that, I can change my trajectory, change my ground speed, and if I want to, I can even go 4-axis with this by engaging cruise height. And now the autopilot system is going to manage my collective for me. And I can beep it up and down. Alright, so let's go ahead and bring it together here. Shoot it direct to this airport. And let's say that I want to fly at 120. And I want to climb up to about 2,500 feet, something like that. And we'll couple it. Now that should not happen. And I'm going to go ahead and continue climbing because actually now it's looking pretty good just like that. So here I can say, oh, I have 1 minute to go to get to that. Let's go to that other airport. Now, if we'll notice, right here, the GPS is doing it, but this is not. So we'll notice this little green line right here. That should be telling me at what point I will reach my set altitude. So if I come in here and I say I want to climb to 3,500 and I engage it, there it is right there. That's telling me where on the map I will reach that point. If I lower my vertical speed, we're going to notice it goes out. If I raise my vertical speed, we'll notice it comes in. So I can use that if I know where I'm going. And let's say that we're going to this guy right here. We'll give the old direct 2. Off it goes. I'll zoom out. And let's go ahead and come on up a little bit more. And there I can see I will hit 5,600 feet right about there. So if I know I need to step down by a certain point, or say this airspace, that there is airspace somewhere in here, and I know that I need to be below a certain altitude before I hit that airspace, I can use my altitude acquire in vertical speed mode, beat my vertical speed until that ring is prior to that point. And if it's not, then I just beep it a little bit to get it to where it is. We'll also notice, if I move it back out a little bit, actually I think that'll be good right there. I'm going to let this come in 300 feet prior. And right now, there it went, 300 feet prior, system is captured. We are in altitude hold mode. So now that it's switched over to altitude hold mode, I'm going to go ahead and put it by step down for 1,500 feet. And I'll preload my vertical speed for 1,000 feet. And right there. Now because I'm in vertical speed mode and not altitude acquire, I don't get that ring anymore. So let's get rid of that. Oh, I boogered that up. As I said, we're going to come down to 1,500 feet. And I am not sure what it's doing right now. but you get the idea. You can use that altitude acquire and then beep your vertical speed until that little arc that should show up lets you know that you are going to arrive at your preset altitude either in time or if you need to expedite your descent. I'm just going to do a fresh direct enter on that one. Oh, there it is right there. So I'm going to use, like we did earlier, I'm going to slow us back to 60. I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to switch this over to that. And actually, we'll do a full-blown downwind. And I'll come back around and go upwind. So we'll just do an altitude hold there. Now that should not be in an altitude acquire. There it goes. Decouple that and we will go to that. And now I'll shoot this approach just by manipulating the bugs. Speed it up a little here. Alright, so I think we're good enough, far enough out. I'm going to go ahead and bring this on around. And slow it down. There we go. Instead of altitude, I'm going to go into flight path angle. Oh, oh, oh. That's not what I wanted. I want to keep it 60. Now I'm going to drive this down using my collective beep. And I dare say that I think I've got it set up for a halfway decent. Now the great thing about flight path angle is once I've set this on that, if I want to, I can speed up. Because it's going to maintain a flight path angle. It doesn't care about my vertical speed. So I'll increase that flight path angle just a little bit so that I hopefully land right about the 1,000-foot markers. And I'm going to go ahead and start slowing back a little bit here. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and preload. What the heck is going on? I guess I'm going to have to manually do the pedals on that one. And that cruise height I'm going to bring on down to 100 feet. Engage that. Now it's going to switch to cruise height. And then I'm going to go to ground trajectory command mode so I can fine tune my ground track here at the bottom. And then using my cyclic right and left. I can do that. So I'll go ahead and slow it back little by little. And bring it on down to 50 feet. Continue slowing back. The great thing about ground trajectory command mode is it's only interested in GPS speed across ground, GPS track across ground. So if my wind slacks out, it's not going to affect my ground speed. The autopilot's going to do what it has to do to maintain the ground speed. Well, it's not happy about me on them pedals. I wonder if the pappies work here. Heck yeah, they do. Well, it's weird that it doesn't work at a different one. Good times.